When my husband and I first announced to our family and friends that we were planning on moving to Paraguay, we got several different responses. And most of them were positive. Most people were excited for us and wished us well in our new adventure. And then there were some that, not that they didn't wish us well, but they did have concerns about whether or not we would come here and things wouldn't work out. We would end up being broke and end up in poverty. And I do understand that for the most part. I mean, being used to living in a Western society where you can just go out, find a job relatively easy, compared to here, and you get social securities, all of that. It makes life comfortable, and it makes you not have to rack your brain quite as much to make a living. And for most people, as soon as you say the words third world country, most people think of just about everybody living in poverty, living in little shacks, and having bare minimum. That is simply just not the case for Paraguay. That has really caused my husband and I to look deeper into what causes poverty, generally who lives in poverty and who does not, and what is the difference between living in poverty and being successful, even when you have the same resources and the same opportunities. One of the biggest factors that sets these people apart, whether being in poverty or being successful in life, is the mindset. And this is derived a lot from the culture. The way that someone is raised, it affects the way that they think overall about all situations in life, on their work ethic, on their way of thinking of money and what a priority is in their life. But where did this cultural mindset come from? In order to understand this better, we need to back up 75 years to when the Mennonites first came over here. Two of the groups of people that we observed to see what the underlying factors were on why one group was well off and the other group was still living in poverty is the indigenous that are around here and the Mennonites that have also settled here in the Kawasu region. In 1948, when the Mennonites first settled in this area, which is the Kawasu region, the indigenous lived in the wilderness in tribes and hunted and gathered in tribes as well. That is the only way of living that they knew. It's the only method of survival that they had, and certainly was not comfortable by any means. The indigenous and the Mennonite could not be two more different groups. The Mennonites had several hundred years of track record of taking virtually unusable land and turning it into something good and productive. They did it back in the early 1800s in Russia, and they did it again in southern Manitoba in the early 1900s. One of the things that we noticed pretty quickly is the standard of living between these two groups could not be more different. The indigenous are totally fine when they have cracks in their walls or leaks in their roofs. They really just make it work, and as long as they have to eat and be clothed today. And the Mennonites, they have a much higher standard for their way of living. They want a better future, they want to have more things, they want to be able to do more things, and it's much more like the middle class American society. This includes living in big modern houses and driving multiple vehicles, one of which is often less than 3 years old or brand new. The Summerfall Colony has a population of about 4,000 people, and on a regular basis there are about 6,000 either indigenous or Hispanics that go into work. To help lift these impoverished communities out of poverty, it takes a whole lot more than to just throw money at it. It really needs to be a mind shift from a tribalistic one to a individual one where they can be self-sufficient and a better, more productive member of society. Something that we have noticed living and working near the indigenous is that they very much are minded that as long as they have food and clothes, then they are totally fine, and anything else will get spent into the cheapest candy for their kids or into alcohol for the adults. As I was preparing to make this video and just thinking through the here and now and immediate gratification mindset that the indigenous have and the tribalistic one, and then the Mennonites having a higher standard of living, it just reminded me so much of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and how he describes the difference between the rich and the poor in America. They have the same opportunities and the same resources, and just whether or not they get to take advantage of those really depends on their mindset and what the mindset of their parents was like. And this can definitely make such a huge difference on where one ends up in life. Now, obviously, homelessness has always been a thing too in developed countries, but we noticed that in the last year before we left Canada, tents were popping up in the city of Winnipeg where they had never been before. We knew there were shelters, obviously, and such, but this just really was a new reality where more people are unprepared for the crazy inflation that they've been having and can no longer keep up with their standard of living. They are having to sacrifice things or have not sacrificed sometimes on time, and then consequences happen, which ultimately leads to poverty, which comes from the mindset of, I need to have this right now, I'm going to do what it takes, whether it's going into debt or spending more than I can afford or living above my means. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe and bell notifications so you don't miss out on future posts.